Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Adele Royce. She is a seasoned author and marketing firm owner. She has several books to her name: Camera Ready, Princess Smile, and For Position Only, and her latest book, Summer's Blood. We'll all talk to her about all these things. Welcome to the show, Adele.
Thank you so much, Ajay, for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Adele. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll learn about mastering the art of writing edgy fiction and making believable characters. We'll talk all about this. But before that, let's understand a bit about your background, your journey, so that people know who they are listening to.
Sure. So, I, as you mentioned, have been a marketing professional for most of my career, and I worked in Las Vegas for many years on the Strip doing marketing for some major hotels. And about 10 years ago, I started writing fiction. I started with the three books. Truth, Lies, and Love in Advertising. That's the title of the first series. And those three books were published. I got them out during the pandemic, and I call them romantic dramedies because there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of conflict, and there's a lot of fun. I wanted those books to be fun, and putting them out in the pandemic was really important to me. I had planned to wait because there was a lot of, questions going on in the industry, and everything was questioned at that time, as we know. So I put them out, and people really responded. They felt that it was almost an escape to go into this world that I had created with those first three books. And so those books, the central conflict is a relationship, right? The two main characters have a conflict through the entire series, which ultimately must get resolved by For Position Only, which was technically the second book I put out, but that was the third book of the series. And Summer's Blood, my new book, is it's a thriller. So I went from sort of the romance and the women's fiction category into a thriller, but it's still attached to the series, the original series. But I started a new series called The Neon Diaries, and I went from books that were set in Los Angeles, which is where I grew up, to books now that are going to be set in Las Vegas. And Summer's Blood is mostly in Las Vegas. And again, a lot of the same characters I used from the first three books, but I put them into a new world. And really, I think that's what I'm doing here, is building worlds, building a world that didn't exist, and inviting my readers to come in and experience that world.
Absolutely, a new world altogether, but the world of Las Vegas Strip, that was also very, very shiny. Why to get away from that and get into a world of, fictional characters, which needs a lot of working, a lot of hard work? You could be just be, part of that Las Vegas Strip, and enjoy the life. You were doing quite good, if I understand.
Yeah, I mean, Las Vegas, I lived and worked there for 15 years of my career. I had multiple roles in public relations and advertising and marketing. And what was cool about the industry side of it is I was able to use that as a backdrop for the first three books. They were in Los Angeles, so we weren't in Vegas yet, but I used the business of advertising and marketing to be like the backdrop for everything that went on in those three books. And the comment that I get a lot is, "Oh my gosh, like anybody who knows that world is like, it was so realistic, you know." And while I don't take actual situations from my career, I'd say it informs all my books. So when I moved into writing about Las Vegas now, I feel like I have to write about a place after I've not live there for a while because I was in Miami when I started writing Summer's Blood, and now I live in California. But it was fun to really go back and say, okay, how much color can I add? Like you said, bright and shiny, sometimes glamorous, sometimes not very glamorous. And it really was, again, a way to take the experience and my knowledge of that city and working and living there and knowing so much about it and being able to have fun with it and put it into this book and, and create um, another world that didn't exist. So, and I have a lot of folks who worked with me or, knew about the books and said, wow, you really nailed Las Vegas in this book.
Right, right, Adele. So has anyone ever come to you and said that, listen, Adele, you put my character in one of your books? Has it ever happened?
You know, not specifically. And what's funny is my characters, I spend a lot of time creating characters. I love to develop characters. The first three books were really character driven novels. Summer's Blood is more of a plot driven novel, but there are so many characters in there. And so to your question, no, I don't. I try to create these characters, and number one, remember that these characters came from the series, so they and then new characters come from the series. So it's almost like the story that's kind of being woven is already there, and is just me saying what's going to happen next, who's going to come in here next. So the characters really are they're from scratch and unique. But oftentimes I will put in some of my own neuroses into a character and just like make it over the top. Like there's some characters I'll say, oh, okay, that like I wash my hands all the time and I use hand sanitizer or whatever. Let's have that character be really kind of a little bit over the top with these sort of OCD things. But yeah, I'll use myself all the time. But yeah, I've never really had anybody say, oh, that character is me, or that character is somebody I know. Yeah, I try to be creative that way.
Right. So, for a lot of people who are in different parts of the world, you use the word edgy fiction. What is this edgy fiction? They may have heard word fiction, but edgy fiction, how do you explain them?
So thank you for asking that, because to me, edginess, there's an element of realism in there, right? I want the stories and the characters to feel real. And life is not so, life has edges to it. We all experience edge in our lives every day. And I wanted the fiction to be real. I wanted people to go into this world and say, this feels real. These people, they become like our friends because they recognize these characters and they feel as though they're going through things that are real. And that's probably the edge that I'm talking about. It's not like a superhero tale. There's nothing there's so many different types of fiction, but these people aren't superheroes. They're just people that have conflicts and issues and things to overcome. And I try to put a lot of humor in these stories. I try to put a lot of heart. I go in the story with them when I'm writing, and so I'm there with them. And I do believe that that's the only way to have that edge and to keep that realism going, is to be there feeling while I'm writing, because then the reader's going to feel it as well.
Right, right. And when we talk of, building a plot, making these characters, creating these characters, believable characters, how do you actually think about all these characters? Fictional, you can still understand, but when you want to make them believable characters, then it's a very difficult job, because again, you said most of these characters are not from real life, maybe some inspiration here and there, but to imagine them and make them believable needs a lot of very real life imagination, very realistic imagination. How do you do it for your novels, your books? How can others learn from that? What is the trick to it?
Oh, well, absolutely 100%. The characters take a lot to develop over time. And what I would say to any writer who is trying to create a realistic character is to really hone in on writing a bio for them. I mean, I write a bio for them as though they're a real person. I figure out where they grew up. I see what things, affected them when they were children, how they relate to others. And what happens is when you create a really full, thought through bio on these characters and you know why they're there and who they're going to be, then when you go to write, it's much clearer to be able to say, okay, here's the dialogue, here's the situation, these two, three characters.
Yes, Adele. Looks like
Did I lose you for a second?
no problem. Yeah, I couldn't get anything. I don't know whether I was on the freeze frame or you were on the freeze frame for because I couldn't get anything. But you can repeat it.
I can go back over.
Yeah.
So what I was saying is, when you write a bio that's really, really three-dimensional, you want the characters to be three-dimensional because you want them to have heart, and you don't want them to just be all evil, right? That's no fun. You want there to be something about them that made them that way. And so writing the bios, developing them, and then when I go into the story and write, I know what they're going to do and how they're going to, that their dialogue is going to be. I know how they're going to act because of their background. And this is, what this person would say. And this is what this character would say in the same situation. They're going to be different. I have a trick. If you pull the attribution, so if it's Jane, for example, she's a character. Craig is another character. If you pull the attribution off, so you don't know who said it, it should sound like that character, no matter what. It should be like, oh, I don't need to say who said that because that's how Craig's personality works, or that's how Jane's personality works, and that's how I create believable characters.
Right. What about the use of AI? Do you think one should use AI to create these characters, or it should be your own imagination, which will be much more easy for a writer to tackle those characters?
Yeah, I mean, to AI, I personally have not had a lot of experience with that yet. I can see how that would be really fun to generate an image so that you can say, oh, this is what that character is going to look like. It's so interesting for me. I have a picture in my head of who they are and what they look like, but then I've never actually seen that picture and I've never seen anybody who acts like that. Sometimes there are celebrities who remind me of a character, and you can sort of watch that celebrity in action and or an actor and say, oh, I kind of feel like this character, if somebody were going to play them, it would be this actor. That's actually fun for me, but it never replaces the actual image that's in my brain that nobody else can see except for on the written page, and they can conjure their own image. So yeah, I haven't used a lot of AI. I can see how that would spark some creativity with characters, but I just haven't gone there yet as an author.
Right. And how many characters should one create in a particular novel? How many will be too much and how many will be too less? What should be the way one should think about creating the number of characters?
That's so. I don't know that there's a standard. It's interesting because I had a lot of characters in Summer's Blood. There are, there's some criminal underworld characters. There's some folks that work in the casino. There's people who are in advertising. There's people, their families, but and I, because I'm writing off of a series, it could come off like there are a lot of characters. I always go with, as long as the reader is not confused and having to have a key or a scorecard and go, who is that I feel like there's a delicate balance. I do have a lot of characters in Summer's Blood, but I've had reviews say they were done so well, and there's enough of them, but you don't feel as though, oh my gosh, let me go back and look, who is this person again? It's kind of, so I don't really recommend like a number, but I mean, you know, we all know that there should be a protagonist. Probably there's two in Summer's Blood. There are two protagonists, an antagonist, you know, the villain. You got to have some villains. There'd be like two or three villains, helpers to the villains, all of that stuff. But I don't really have a number. I feel like it always develops naturally.
Right, right, Adele. And when you are writing, that time your mind, your all the effort is focused on the story, or is it focused on the reader? Obviously, the reader will ultimately get when the story is done. But what should one keep in mind all the time when one on the story or on the reader or on the market?
I actually, that's such a great question, by the way. I actually write my books first and foremost for myself. I want to make sure that I'm engaged. I always feel like if nobody cares, if I don't care about my story and my characters, no one else will. But once I do a draft, and the draft is, that's just the early step, because there are so many drafts. And but so I do keep my readers in mind. I don't want to alienate people who loved the first series because it was romantic dramedy, and now I'm in thriller. I feel like I do keep in mind, I want to make sure that those readers, because I have a reader group that they can't wait for the next book, and I don't want to put out something out and have them say, what is this? So I do keep that in mind. But I think when I finish and I get my book to the most, where it's like down to the final edit, it's getting there. I have beta readers. I have like 8, 10 of them, and they read the book in its entirety as a manuscript. And they are groups of my readers, people that read in thriller, people who I know and trust to give me an honest opinion. And that's when I go back and I say, I'm getting this same opinion from everyone. I got to make some changes to whether it's the character, or it's something in the story that just didn't make sense, or they and that's kind of how I do that. So I'd say I definitely keep the reader in mind, but I'm not obsessing over it while I'm writing those drafts. I'm like I'm thinking about that when I've got this mostly finished. And actually, for Summer's Blood, which, here's the book, I I went back and changed the ending after a lot of people said something that made sense to me, and I said, you know what, that is so smart. And so I want my readers to, I want them to think that this is great. I want them to love it. I don't want them to turn every page and be like, wow, this is exciting. I don't want to disappoint anybody. I just want it to be a great book.
Absolutely great book, and you can show the book nicely to the audience, Adele. You have the book in your hand. If you can show it for our audience, you are on freeze again. For me, I'm sure I am on the freeze for you, but let's wait. Sometimes it happens. Yes, yes, Adele. I said that you can show your book nicely to the audience so that they can have a good look.
That's a
Wonderful.
Las Vegas skyline, and it was the most current one from the summer. So, because it changes all the time, as we know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And talking of the novel writing process, book writing process, we talked about the readers. We talked about writing for oneself. When should you focus on the market? When is the time? Does it when it goes to the editor, or there has to be a time because you need money afterwards? After all, the book has to go and sell. That is also required. Otherwise, an indie writer will not be able to survive in that sense. So, how should one look at the market as an author?
Well, the market is definitely, you want to market your book. You want to have a plan far in advance of publication. I am a marketer by trade, as you know, so I
Yeah.
have a marketing plan. I treat myself like a client. I had a publishing partner on this book who are very excellent book marketers. I don't profess to know everything about book marketing, but there are ways to get to the readers who want a thriller, who want this type of book and who love it. And I think that it's not always the same answer. You know, what worked for me with the three books during the pandemic does not work for me now. This is, to me, Summer's Blood has been it's expanded my audience. To the target audience is much different. It's bigger now, and reaching those people is really, really important. And I mean, that's pretty much all I can say is just that planning. If you're an author, you got to plan the marketing, and I know it's not fun, but you have to really plan it in advance, and you have to stay on it. I mean, I see these as my babies. These are my books. I got to raise them right. I got to put them out into the world and raise them so that they are appreciated and that everybody knows about them. And that's not always easy.
Right. And in a nutshell, then, what makes a good story? Does it include everything or just a good story itself?
I think the story is paramount. Like this, you need to have a good story, but you need to tell it well, and you need to tell it in a way that makes people excited and interested. And one of the things I do is I've learned this from an author is I always keep this. I keep a sticky note on my computer that says surprise, reveal, or reversal. And every chapter I feel needs to have one of those or all three of the elements. And so that's I would say the story has to be really good. The story can evolve, and it needs to be, it needs to be something that people can hold on to and say, wow, this is a powerful story. I want it to be powerful, but the way that you tell it, the way that you unveil and reveal things slowly, especially through a thriller mystery, that's a different genre. You have to give enough clues away, but not too many, because you don't want them to see the plot a mile away. You want it to just be a little bit at a time. So back to your question, pacing. Great story, pacing is important. To pace the story.
Right, absolutely. And so let's look at the life of an indie writer today's time. With so many tools available, platforms available, options available, you can also sell from your own website if it works for you. How is the life of an indie writer? Can they think of surviving well, or is it a lucrative line at the moment?
Well, so I'm going to be totally honest. It's not. I mean, I'm not going to get rich doing this as an indie author. I have to work really hard, but I love it, and that's, to me, the writing process, the publishing process, it's so important and fun to me. It's my passion. So I don't like look at, okay, how much am I going to make off of this book? So far this book is doing incredibly well. In fact, it's doing better than the other books. But when I look at the sales and the numbers, that's just not. It's not wholly important to me. I feel like, there are so many authors that do make a lot of money, and maybe they're writing something different for me. They're writing nonfiction or, self-help books or a memoir. I mean, there's so many books out there, but I just feel like I don't look at that as the criterion of the success of the book. It's just how many dollars I've made. I want it to be, I want people to read it. I want people to know about it. And I want them to like it. And that's the importance of it to me.
Right, right. So what's next coming on from Adele Royce? Is it you just after Summer's Blood? If I understand, you have got a sequel to that, and also the Neon Diaries. Tell us about that.
So Summer's Blood is the first book of Neon Diaries. So I'm actually a little over halfway finished with the sequel to Summer's Blood. So that I really want to come out, within the next year. Don't want to commit to that because I want to make sure that one's great. So I'll have 2 more books in the Neon Diaries. And I also have a book of short stories that I'd like to get that out. Similar timing, but it's pretty much finished. I actually have, if your readers want to sample my writing and read, I have a short story from the Deadly Sins collection, which is the one that I'm working on. And that story is on my website. If you go to adeleroyce.com and you scroll down, all you have to do is sign up for my emails, but I rarely send emails, so I won't spam you. But if you sign up, you'll get access to that story and you can read it. And those stories really fall into the thriller category too. So I'm kind of moved into that new space with all my writing.
Right. There is much to learn from you about all these things and so many books you are writing. So, all those people who want to learn from you, know more about your books, about what you are doing, even in your marketing consulting firm, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
You can find me at adeleroyce.com. That's my website. I have all my books there. I have fun things that you can learn about all the characters. They kind of, I've bought short bios on each of them for both series. And my email address, you can get that also on my website, but it's Adele at adeleroyce.com. I love to hear from readers. I love to hear from other writers. And so that's how to find me. And I'm also on a lot of social media platforms. I have Facebook and X, Twitter, and Instagram too. If you want to find me there as well.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.